Well, good afternoon, good morning, or perhaps even good evening, depending on where you are joining us from. My name is Vicky Mooney, and I shall be your host for the next 1 hour or thereabouts as we delve into a conversation on bariatric surgery. Now, we all know that rising obesity rates across the world on the back of, or are we still in the pandemic, has put a lot of pressure on healthcare systems. And unfortunately, obesity has not been prioritised as one of those treatment areas in many countries. We've seen pushback on surgeries, we've seen a lot of demand on patient support, and a lot of questions from our patient community. Now, this is why we are delving into this topic tonight, and I am so delighted that coming up for you now, we have interviews from bariatric surgeon and Professor Gerhard Prager from Austria, patient support, and talking about Facebook groups and everything that patients need with Deirdre Kendlin-Murphy. And of course, we will have a guest panel now. I'm delighted that in his scrubs, Dr. Michael Crotty from Ireland is joining us. We also have Natasja, our latest ECPO representative, joining us from the Netherlands. Of course, you all know Susie and Ken, who will join us from Ireland in the UK. Now, let's look at how you can get in touch with us. You can join us, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, or LinkedIn. You can just use hashtag ECPO Patient Lounge. If you'd like to watch this back, you can indeed. We will have it on our media site online in the next about 24 hours. And of course, thank you so much to the supporters and our partners, IFSO, Novo Nordisk, and Medtronic, because these are the people that help us make this possible. Now, let's get to it. We have an interview. I was quite lucky, and our team were quite blessed, that Professor Gerhard Prager took his time out at the weekend to join me over a coffee and have a little bit of a conversation about bariatric surgery. What is the history behind it? What is available for our patient community? And most importantly, what is important for the patient? Gerhard is not only a surgeon, he was past president for IFSO in the European chapter. He is president-elect of IFSO Global, and on top of that, he was former president of the Austrian Society for Obesity Surgery. So he is well skilled and rehearsed in the whole area. Let's have a listen to what Gerhard had to share at the weekend. Hello and welcome, Gerhard Prager. It is a joy to have you here. Our patient community are quite excited. This is the first time you've been on the patient lounge, so welcome along.
Thank you very much for having me. It's my pleasure to be with you.
Wonderful. Now, we all know that you are quite a legend in bariatric surgery in that field. When we speak about bariatric surgery, if you go on Google and you Google bariatric surgery, your face and your name pops up everywhere. So we have a patient community, and we know that over the years, bariatric surgery has changed so much. I look back to my own experience, 2005, I had a Roux, but it has come such a long way since then. Can you give us an idea and a feel for what is available now for patients?
All procedures, all operations nowadays are minimally invasive, which means they are all done by laparoscopy. So your abdomen is inflated with gas. The operation takes somewhere between 30 minutes and 1.5 hours. Usually, most surgeons apply so-called fast-track concepts, which means already 1 hour after the operation, you stand up and you are allowed to drink. You have no drains, you have no catheter, and in most cases, you leave the hospital somewhere between 24 and 72 hours. So also for the type of operations, a lot of things has changed. Keep in mind, the first Roux gastric bypass has been done in 1967. So this is already half a century ago. And you can imagine how much has changed from that time on. At that time, surgeons used single incision, but this does not mean such a tiny incision, but a very, very long incision. They opened all the abdominal cavity, and nowadays all these procedures are done in a minimally invasive way. Which types of operations do we have? I just want to mention the most important ones. Number one, worldwide, is the so-called sleeve gastrectomy. With these operations, you reduce your gastric volume by approximately 85%. But it's not only reducing the volume, you also have a huge impact on gut hormones, on hormones from the stomach. For example, the hunger hormone ghrelin is produced by the stomach, and you really reduce the feeling of hunger. But keep in mind, operation is just one part of a package, and maybe we will talk about that later. The second most important operation is what you mentioned, Vicky. It's the Roux gastric bypass, and I think it's still the gold standard in bariatric surgery. And it evolved, it changed a lot, the way how we do it. Nowadays, we make the gastric pouch long and slim. Why? The food goes slower through that pouch, and it's less likely to dilate. So you have maybe better long-term success. And we increased the length of small bowel, which we bypassed, the so-called biliopancreatic limb, because we understand now that there is a lot of power in long-term weight loss in that limb. On the other hand, you have to balance that. You should not exclude too much, because then you might harm your patient. So you really need to find somebody who is doing a lot of these procedures. Then he's doing it in a very good way. You would not go with your car, let's say a BMW, to a, let's say, to Mercedes. I don't know how to express that.
So, garage, yes, of course.
Yeah, garage, thanks. And the same is true here. And the third most common operation worldwide is nowadays the so-called one anastomosis gastric bypass. The inventor of that procedure is Robert Rutledge, and he called it mini gastric bypass. And there is some little differences between OAGB, one anastomosis gastric bypass, mini gastric bypass, and omega loop gastric bypass, but the principle is always the same. You have a long gastric tube, a long gastric pouch, and you attach only one piece of small bowel. So the bile immediately mixes with the food, in contrast to the Roux gastric bypass. And then there are some other procedures recognized by IFSO. IFSO is the scientific organization. This is the SADS and the BPDDS, but they play worldwide scene only a very, very small role.
It is fascinating what we can do now, isn't it? I mean, when I mentioned about my own surgery going back 16 years ago, I thought, my goodness, we have come so far with technology and surgical interventions and treatments for people. One thing I actually wanted to ask you about was, we often have that conversation about weight regain. And I'm one of those patients where I've kind of come 16 years later and had some weight regain. And can I ask you about revision surgery? And this is becoming slightly more common now, I believe.
Definitely. The stomach is a muscle. So you must imagine, if you, let's say, drink carbohydrated drinks or overeat several times, your pouch might stretch. And as I mentioned before, 16 years ago, the pouch was made very short and a little bit broader. So it's much more likely that this pouch will dilate. Imagine you have a balloon for children. Balloon number one is small and broader. Try to inflate that one. And then you take a second balloon, very long and thin, and inflate the second one. And you will recognize that the first one is much easier to inflate. And what does inflate mean? That's dilation with the long-term run. Can we do something on that? Of course, first we have to make a diagnosis, check what is the cause for the weight regain. You need proper dietitian counseling, analyzing what is your eating pattern. Today we have even medication that work pretty well. So maybe we add another armamentarium, another weapon of our armamentarium to help you. And at the very end, we will also maybe go back to the OR, reduce the size of your gastric pouch, and might place a ring on top of the anastomosis. But this is different than gastric banding because this ring should not apply restriction from the beginning, but should prevent dilation of your pouch and slow down the emptying of your pouch.
That is really interesting. I actually had my revision surgery going back about 5-6 months ago now, and I've had moderate weight loss, nothing like I had in the original surgery. But one thing that my surgeon has said to me was, he said, as soon as we went in, we could see initially there was a hockey stick. He said, and obviously we had to extend. And he said, it's no different to if you look at somebody having a hip replacement 15, 20 years ago. We have come so far in surgical intervention and tools and ways, therapies. He said that we wouldn't do it the same way 15, 20 years ago. We know so much more now. And there's a lot to be dispelled around bariatric surgery and treatments. And what are the most common, I suppose, myths or misinformation that you might have heard over the years?
If people think that you put yourself on the operating table and everything is perfect afterwards, this is simply not true. You must recognize that this is a chronic disease, and this is just one piece of help you have. It's a very, very powerful piece of help, but you need to go for an entire package. You need to have nutrition counseling before the operation. You need to have proper hormone diagnosis before. You might have hypothyroidism, or in very rare cases, Cushing's disease, which is too much cortisol producing from your body, and many, many, many other aspects. So you have to go somewhere where this package is offered. And this also consists of support after the operation. And it is so important. That's what we see in the long-term run. Those who are the most successful people, they go for that support in the long-term run. I think this is maybe the most common mistake people make with bariatric surgery, that they believe that you go there, place your body for 1 hour on the operating table, and everything is solved. Sorry to say that this is simply not true.
I was one of those people back in 2005, and I really thought when it was my turn after 18 months of being with the team, the multidisciplinary team, I thought, I've got my golden ticket. I have the surgery now, and that is it. I'm going to be fixed. I will be cured, without realizing that obesity was a chronic relapsing disease, and therefore I need lifelong management and treatment and the support of that team. And I know we have Dr. Michael Crotty coming up, who will delve into that a little bit more and the importance of that. But just while I have you here, I wanted to ask, and I know you're the perfect person to ask, are we seeing a big increase in bariatric surgeries across the world? And how is that changing or evolving?
Sorry, how was the change?
How is it changing? How much is it increasing? I know back to 2005, I was patient number 50.
So in 2018, we had worldwide more than 1 million procedures. The problem is, with the COVID pandemic, the numbers dropped because it was said that bariatric surgery is not that important. But I think there are good arguments that bariatric surgery is even more important, because when you look at the ICUs and those people being most vulnerable for the virus, you will recognize that it's obesity. Obesity, diabetes, these are the most vulnerable persons. Therefore, you should not postpone this type of surgery. It increased dramatically worldwide, as I said. The reason is that we have a ton of studies that really demonstrate that this type of treatment is not only cost effective, but cost saving and prolonging the life and improving the quality of life of our patients. And I give you another example. In Austria and German-speaking countries, obesity is often associated with less income, being not that educated. This, of course, it's statistics. But if we're talking about chances in life, I think it's the responsibility of politics to give people the same chances in life. So you must give them the tools, which also means you must pay for the treatment of that chronic disease. And of course, it's important to look for prevention, but it's, I think, even more important to look for treatment of those being affected by the disease. And that's what I miss in politics. Pay for the medication, pay for the operation. It's a good investment because these people come back into the working process, and I think it's the best thing politicians could do.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. And I know the Open EU team and our colleagues over in EASO in the policy area are working so unbelievably hard
Yeah.
with the interest group to drive that change because, as you said, it's an investment and long term we know what those savings are. So I'm delighted you brought that up, and no doubt the conversation will continue online and on Twitter and social media about that area as well. But I know you're a busy man, and I am delighted that you took the time for our patient community. You are a real legend for doing that. But I just want to give you perhaps another minute and just ask you, is there anything that you would like to say to our patient community who are watching, who may be considering surgery or are post-surgery or perhaps even headed in for surgery tomorrow?
Don't be afraid of the surgery. This is really a standard procedure nowadays. Go for a team. You need a whole team approach for that. Not if somebody tells you, I put you tomorrow on the operating table, don't do it. You really need some time for preparation. You should also think about it. It's not about only losing weight. You must really change your lifestyle. This is so important. This is true for diet. There is no diet. All diets work the same as long as you follow them, but it's about a lifelong change in your behavior. And surgery is the most powerful weapon we have nowadays. It's very good, but keep in mind, team approach, lifelong support, lifelong treatment. That's maybe my take-home message.
I think that is the best message that we're going to hear tonight. Gerhard, I am so unbelievably grateful, as are our patient community. Thank you for your time, your knowledge, and for everything that you do for our patient community. Take care and have a wonderful evening.
You too, Vicky. Thank you very much, and goodbye to all of you. Bye-bye.
And you are very welcome back. I have to say and admit that I probably watched that 3 times, and each time I want to ask Gerhard another question on bariatric surgery. However, it's time now to jump to our panel, and I'm so excited because in his scrubs from Dublin we have Dr. Michael Crotty joining us now. Dr. Crotty, or Mick as I like to call you because we are on good terms now, is an obesity specialist when it comes to patients and being a GP and ensuring the patients get the most. And My Best Weight is the best place to go to find out even more about Dr. Crotty. And I'm delighted you can join us for the next 15 minutes or thereabouts. And we also have our latest and newest advocate to ECPO joining us from the Netherlands, Natasja, and I hope I pronounced your surname correctly, Wijling.
Yes.
You are an advocate, you are a patient, you are passionate about the work that you do, and we are delighted to have you here as somebody who's, like myself, undergone surgery and can bring that experience. Now, I want to just open this conversation for the next, say, 14, 15 minutes. And first of all, Natasja, I want to come to you as a patient and ask you for your thoughts on what Gerhard was saying on the importance of having that backup support and that multidisciplinary team.
Yes, I absolutely agree with him. You need the period before surgery just to be prepared for your surgery, to rethink, is this really my path to walk? Is there no other way? And it's not the quick fix. You need to be really aware that you need to change your lifestyle and in which way you have to do it. And it's not only surgery and after that it's done. It's not true. It's really the hard way.
It is, and all too often we see people say, "Oh, you've had bariatric surgery. You've taken the easy road." And it's like it's not an easy road. It's quite a hard um, challenge, and it's a life-changing decision. And I want to bring Dr. Crotty in here. Mick, you see patients all the time that are considering or contemplating whether or not bariatric surgery is the correct treatment for them. And what are your thoughts on the back of what Gerhard was saying and considering that multidisciplinary team? How is it when you actually meet a patient and say, hey, you're considering surgery? This is huge.
Yeah, and I think I suppose from Gerhard's interview, I thought it was fantastic. I think he touched on a lot of really, really important points. You know, I think emphasizing that this is a chronic, progressive, relapsing medical condition, that we don't cure it, we manage it long term. Even if somebody's percentage body weight reduces, you know, they still have the chronic disease of obesity and they need long-term ongoing support. And everybody's needs are different. You know, some people, you know, will benefit from seeing a psychologist. Some people will benefit from nutritional information from a dietitian, from, you know, exercise specialists, physiotherapists to manage pain and physical activity, you know, anybody from an occupational therapist to a speech and language therapist. You know, I'm a GP by training, and I think it's so important to have the GP on board as far as long-term follow-up, managing other kind of, you know, chronic medical conditions that may coexist with weight, you know, managing medications, looking at blood tests, all of these things that don't finish once somebody has had surgery. You know, that somebody needs ongoing support. We, you know, for asthma, we don't put people on an inhaler and say goodbye, good luck, and you know, see you in 10 years. We follow them up, we see how they're getting on, we assess them for complications, you know, and really, you know, the multidisciplinary team communicates about each person we meet, you know, and assesses what are their needs, because they're a unique individual. Nobody else is like them. Nobody else has traveled their same journey. So I think it's really important that this is an individual, you know, condition for every person. And the more support we can offer people, the better long term. And it might, you know, down the line, if somebody is experiencing weight regain, we may look at medications, we may look at behavioral supports and interventions. There's so many different safe, effective, evidence-based treatments that we can offer people now. You know, it's really an exciting time for people. But I absolutely agree, in advance of surgery and follow-up, you know, the team approach, you know, is so important. And from my perspective, when I meet people and talk about weight, you know, I think the first thing that really strikes me is, you know, what it has taken for somebody to come and meet me and talk about their weight, you know, in the context of their life, and how brave a decision that is for a lot of people, you know, in the face of kind of the stigma and bias that they have kind of experienced in their day-to-day life. So that's one thing that always really kind of resonates with me. And, you know, a lot of the time I'm meeting somebody, I've never met anybody like them before. They're unique. And increasingly people are, you know, experts in their own body, they're experts in their own health, you know, and they will educate me on how they're feeling, how they're experiencing things. You know, we see the, you know, common issues that arise, but it's different for everybody. So I think, you know, this real kind of collaborative approach and team approach is just vital long term. And, you know, I count myself lucky to be able to kind of collaborate with patients, because, you know, I often feel I'm learning as much from them as you know, as trying to help them, you know.
I can honestly tell you that knowing the patient community in Ireland so well, that they are incredibly grateful for the work that you do and how patient-centric, like Gerhard, you are. And I think this is a very fresh and new approach to how GPs and specialists engage with people when it comes to obesity, because as you said, there is a huge stigma and a huge weight bias there. And when we talk about bariatric surgery, and I've heard it myself, I've had it myself going back so many years ago. You took the easy road, you know, oh, you just had your stomach tied or stapled just so you can't eat, you know, why couldn't you just control it yourself? And I actually wonder, just going back to Natasja, as you're in the Netherlands and obviously in Western Europe, we're familiar with whether or not that weight bias and stigma exists. Was that an experience that you perhaps had, you know, over in the Netherlands? Is that something that you were familiar with, that there was a bit of judgment perhaps with having surgery, or in the Netherlands is it different?
No, it's no different from anywhere else in the world. Me personally, I was reluctant to tell people in my family and friends that I would have gastric bypass surgery because of the biases about having the easy way. And in the end, I told them it might look like the easy way, but just take into consideration you're not having surgery on your brain, you're having surgery on your stomach, and I still have to make wise choices
Oh, I see.
Rather I take chocolate or I take a piece of cheese, and if I am going for a run or sit on my couch, watch television, that's all what helps losing weight. And just the gastric bypass surgery is just like a little help in my back to give me the courage to do it. And it's still, it's not your brain, it's being, your complete lifestyle has to be changed. And that, yeah, it helped people to realize that, okay, it's not only surgery, you have to do a lot of yourself. And in the end, after about a year, your gastric bypass won't help you anymore, and you have to be, how do you call it? You have to have that new lifestyle so you don't fall back into your old lifestyle and you gain weight again.
You have to build those new routines and the good habits, and you do that with that multidisciplinary team behind you to help you. And I'm conscious, I have a meeting with my dietitian next week, you know, on the back of my revision. And, you know, there are so many times that perhaps a slider food is the easier option of saying, oh, I'll have a cheese triangle because, you know, it's easy to digest, rather than, you know, trying more with the chicken or the fish and that. And it is so important to keep connected. But Michael, before we go, because we've got about 3 or 4 minutes left, I kind of just want to ask you a little bit more about, you know, what your patients actually ask. You know, what is kind of like their most common question or worry or challenge or concern, you know, pre-surgery, even post-surgery?
Yeah, so I think everybody is different, but you know, I think people who have, you know, looked into surgery, researched it, most people don't come to this decision overnight. It has taken a long time. You know, they're increasingly aware of how surgery works, how powerful a tool and treatment it is. But you know how it is changing that hormonal regulation of appetite. It is changing kind of, you know, absorption and microbiome and different things. You know, how it contributes to weight management. But I think they're also, you know, I think they're conscious that this isn't, as you said, the cure or magic bullet, and this, you know, is something that they'll need ongoing support for. And that's one of the things that kind of worries me is you know, we're seeing a lot of people maybe who, you know, with medical tourism here in Ireland, we have some people who are potentially going abroad, and you can absolutely see why they would. They're desperate for treatment and are struggling to get it. The challenge is some people are coming back and they don't have that kind of structure, that, you know, team approach. And, you know, as a GP, you know, I know a lot of my colleagues have patients coming into them, and, you know, they don't maybe kind of have the skill and knowledge, you know, that is required for that patient. So they're desperate for education and they're desperate to kind of find more information. But I think, you know, a lot of times, you know, people, maybe before surgery, one of the main things they're looking at is the percentage of weight loss and the difference of one surgery versus enough versus another as far as complications. But I think really, to me, you know, it's about talking to them about, you know, this as a tool, as a treatment, you know, focusing not just on percentage of weight loss, but looking at health, looking at the benefits to health for somebody, looking at kind of improving quality of life, looking at kind of maintaining muscle mass, looking at, you know, the nutritional composition and quality of what we're taking, looking at, you know, the improvements in overall health, whether it be blood pressure or blood sugars, all these non-scale successes that people have. And, you know, really for me, that the key is, you know, facilitating people enjoying their life, improving their health, you know, achieving the things they want to achieve. And that's, to me, why it's so important that we have this multidisciplinary approach, you know, where people can rely on their expert in that area, whether it be the psychologist or the dietitian or the physio, or again, you know, somebody else who's been through the same journey, a patient advocate or somebody they've been put in support with, somebody who has lived the same journey they have, that they can draw on their experience and knowledge and expertise. So I think really this is collaborative, this is working together, you know, to try and, you know, help people long term. And, you know, I'm delighted to be involved with this.
And we're most certainly delighted to have you as a part of it and co-creating with us. And as you said rightly, it is about aligning that narrative and pushing that in society, that we're not talking about the number on the scale as much as we're talking about your health. You know, less risk of diabetes type 2 or certain cancers and being able to, you know, take the stairs rather than the lift, and having that healthier, more positive life. And as we have to move on to our next interview, Natasha, I just want to give you the last words. And is there anything that you would add or share with the patient community on bariatric surgery that you feel is important for them to hear?
Well, for me, what helped was find a buddy. Find somebody who's in the same situation, maybe on Facebook groups or internet or whatever, and you can share your experience and you don't have to be ashamed.
You know, that is the most perfect introduction to our next interview. And on that note, Dr. Crotty, we'll let you get back to work, and Natasha, we'll let you get back to your family. And thank you for joining us. And of course, you can find hashtag ECPO Patient Lounge, where the conversation is continuing online. But on that note, we're going to jump over to our next interview. Now, I had the pleasure of having quite a long conversation where my dog again was in the background growling. In case you heard him when listening to Gerhard, you might have heard a little "err." That was my dog Rico. Apologies. But I had a great conversation with Deirdre, and Rico was in the background. We chatted for about 45 minutes, but we did capture about a 15-minute interview on the importance of patient support. And Deirdre is not only a beautiful mum to two fabulous children and husband, but she is the admin and creator of Bariatric Surgery Support Ireland on Facebook. She's a strong advocate for ICPO, the Irish Coalition for People Living with Obesity. Now let's have a listen to what Deirdre had to share with us. Hello, Deirdre. Well, it is wonderful to have you here joining us. I'm delighted we can have you on board. I know you're a busy lady. You are not only an advocate with ICPO, the Irish Coalition for People Living with Obesity, you are a patient like myself who has been down the road of surgery. You're a mom of beautiful little kitties. You're a wife to a husband who's also had surgery. And you also run the Bariatric Surgery Support Group in Ireland. So it really is wonderful to have you here with us.
Thanks for having me, Vicky.
No problem at all. It's a delight. So I want to delve into a little bit about patients and support. And we look at Facebook groups, they're popping up everywhere. And I really realized when we were chatting earlier, I was kicked off Facebook for a little while, for a few days, and I felt like I'd lost an arm because all of my groups had disappeared suddenly. I was like, oh my goodness, how do I get my support? So tell us a little bit about your experience as a patient and the group that you run.
Yeah, so myself and my husband have had bariatric surgery, and when we were looking into having bariatric surgery, the only groups we could find were from the US. We couldn't find anything that was specific to Ireland, so we didn't even know that you could have surgery in Ireland. And we found it very difficult to find the information we need, to find where we could have it done, or we didn't even know it was covered under health insurance. And the stuff we found out, we really found out in a haphazard way. And we just wanted to be able to have a place that people could go to find information that was specific to Ireland. And even products that people recommend, like the protein powders and stuff that people would recommend on the American groups, weren't available here. And then it involved more research to try and find something. So having a place that Irish people could go who wanted surgery would know where to have it, but also that afterwards they would have a safe space to go to where they could share ideas and help each other along the way. Because I think doing something together is much easier than doing something on your own.
Yeah, most definitely. I love what you said about the fact that we can't access products, which is so key for patients when you've had surgery. You know, we're all told protein, 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 you know, and get your calcium and, you know, make sure you're getting your vitamins. And is this kind of a common question that you're seeing throughout the groups, the patients that are there, the people that are there?
Yeah, so a lot of the questions are, you know, where can I go and how much is it and am I covered? And, you know, it's more at the beginning for people, it's where can I get this and where can I go? But also how quickly can I have it done? That people, when they decide they want it done tomorrow. They don't want to wait. They don't want to have to go through the rigmarole of all the appointments and all the tests. But also they don't understand the importance of all the tests and the waiting periods and why it's really important to see the endocrinologist, to see the dietitian, to see the surgeon, to see the physio, and to see the multidisciplinary teams that the Irish hospitals have set up, but to see them in advance of your surgery so that you can prepare properly for surgery. And it's really difficult to explain to people that actually having to wait a couple of months will actually benefit you for years and years ahead. I know they want surgery now, and I wanted it immediately. Once I found out there was such a thing, I wanted it yesterday, and I
Yes,
couldn't believe I had to wait. But
I
the
know.
importance of this multidisciplinary team is huge, and we want to get this across to people, and to explain to them the benefit of it, a lifelong benefit of it.
I have seen this in your group where, and it's something I have to say, I take my hat off to yourself and your husband and your admin, sir, because they really work well connected with the likes of Dr. Michael Crotty that we were speaking to earlier, to ensure that patients are getting the right information. They're getting the correct information, because all too often we see a group set up and it's not set up by somebody like yourself or Susie and Ken that we'll be talking to shortly, and we haven't got that connection to the medical community to instill the right information, and that's a huge challenge.
And it's really important, as you said, to get the correct information. So the likes of Michael Crotty at My Best Weight, he's given talks for us through ICPO, and they're free to access for anybody who wants to view them. And the information that you get from the likes of Michael, who is an expert in his field, is just priceless. You know, we don't want to make a profit out of anybody. We don't want someone to have to pay money to find out information about a medical treatment for a medical problem. You know, you shouldn't have to pay to go to a conference to find out about something that's available to you. And we are indebted to the likes of Michael Crotty and all the other doctors who come on to the ICPO meetings and give their advice free of charge to our patients and to help them on their journey.
This is excellent because we see that, you know, bariatric surgery is available. We see a lot of people travel abroad for it. A lot of people aren't aware of the multidisciplinary team, and the fact that we're doing this broadcast, we've had Gerhard on talking about the different surgeries available. But one thing I find such a challenge is that waiting period. And I was quite lucky. I was patient number 50 in 2005 to have my surgery in Ireland. I was number 50 on the list and the youngest patient they had had. And I'd only waited 18 months. And like yourself, I remember the psychologist Roux saying, if I offered you the surgery now tomorrow, if I gave you to go ahead, would you have it? And I said, put me on the bed now. Like yourself, I just wanted it then and there. But it was that 18 months of tests and nutrition and exercise and changing my mindset that was so important. How open do you think, from, you know, gauging the conversations of people within the groups and even in your own conversations, how open are people to that waiting period, do you think?
They're not very open to it, but it's because they don't understand the importance of it. They see somebody rings a clinic abroad and they have the surgery 3 or 4 weeks later, and they see them in 4 months' time and they've lost stones and stones of weight, and they're looking going, oh my God, that person looks fabulous and they had the surgery so quickly, and look at them, they're amazing, and that's what I want, because they want that result. But they don't understand that this is a lifelong issue that needs to be dealt with. And it's not just have the surgery and the weight goes away. If you're not mentally and physically prepared for this surgery, you will not succeed long term. And if there are complications afterwards, who's going to mind you? You can't just turn around and say, oh, my GP has a duty of care to mind me. Your poor GP probably doesn't know anything about bariatric surgery. They are not experts in this field. And yes, they will mind you. They will do their utmost to help you. They are the most caring profession in the world, but they may not know exactly what you need depending on what surgery you had. We also see questions come up on the group, which is very worrying. I'm 6 weeks post-op. What am I supposed to be eating? No, you should know what you're supposed to be eating. This should have been discussed in advance. You should have a written plan. You should know what stage food you're supposed to be on. You shouldn't be saying, oh, well, Mary down the road was allowed to eat solids at 3 weeks, I'm going to eat solids. No, if your surgeon told you to stay on liquids, you follow your surgeon's advice. And I get really worried about these people because they come up saying, what am I supposed to be eating? I'm not your expert. I do not know what surgery you had. I do not know your body. I do not know your medical condition. And I am a patient. I am not a dietitian. I am not a medical expert. I can tell you what I did and what worked for me, but that may not work for you. And even myself and my husband had our surgery 3 weeks apart. What worked for him did not work for me, and vice versa.
Yeah. I think listening to what you've said there, I'm just going to go back a little bit because you were talking about these fantastic inspirational stories. And I fell into that pitfall when I had my surgery. I went from being that mum at home to being a plus size model in Ireland. And it was like, look at this wonderful woman who's lost all of this weight. She's lost 14 stone, over 100 kilos. And I was that, kind of typical media image that people, kind of aspire to. Oh my gosh, I want surgery. That's what's going to happen to me. My life is going to change. However, I think the challenge that we have is that those inspirational stories are vital to give people hope, because we all need a light at the end of the tunnel when we've had stigma and bullying and shame from having obesity. That is majority not your own fault. It is not your own fault at all. It is a disease. However, I think we need to marry it up with the inspirational stories in the media, but with that backup support of, right, it is lifelong, it is a disease, and your treatment is going to be individual and it has to be personalized. It has, as you said, yourself and your husband, what worked for him didn't work for you. And I think we need to have more of that out there in these media stories and presences. But when you actually say about, the conversations about what should I be eating and what stage, this just brings me right back to, Michael Crotty talking about the multidisciplinary team. And it is so hard for people to get into that mindset of, okay, I have to go to a nutritionist. I have to follow this plan. And I think part of the problem that we see overall when we step back is that people end up then back in the system if they have not got their plan. And that is really worrying, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I'll give you a good example. So when I was about 4 months post-op, I started to get very bad pains in my rib cage. And we figured that I have a dairy allergy. I've always had it. I get a rash and sure, I just eat it anyway. But the dairy allergy turned into pains under my rib cage. So the dietitian said, come off dairy. And I said, okay, I'll come off dairy. We'll see if it improves. And sure, within a few days it improved. So the culprit was the dairy. But for the 3 following weeks after I came off the dairy, I didn't lose any weight at all. And I went back to the dietitian and went, what is going on? And she said, what's your protein intake? And when I counted up my protein intake, I was only hitting 20 or 30 grams as opposed to the recommended 60 to 80 grams.
Yeah.
And because my dairy had come out of my diet, I had lost my yogurts, my cheese, my milk,
Yeah.
everything that I had relied on. So she helped me replace that with non-dairy versions of it. And within a week, the weight started to come off again. But without her, I don't know if I would have been able to switch to dairy free and continue with my weight loss the way it was. And I was only 4 months post-op. I wasn't ready to stop losing weight. And without her help and her assistance, I don't think I could have figured it out by myself.
It is such a brilliant example because I've had a revision of my surgery, and one of the things that people had said to me before was, oh, you've had to have a revision. Oh gosh, how come you regained weight? And that's where I almost want to, hit them with, something from Dr. Arya Sharma and say, it's not just down to, my stomach actually stretched perhaps, and I started eating 4,000 calories a day, but, it is actually a disease. So therefore there's a lot more behind it. But when I had my revision, I suppose my key to getting my protein in when I was 4, 5, 6 weeks going into that very soft stage was a little laughing cow light triangle, because it was 2.5 grams of protein. And I was like, I can have one of them then, and I can have one of them then, some protein milk. So I can really see how you would have struggled to maintain the protein, because we struggle to digest, chicken and fish so early on, really. So having your nutritionist, your dietitian there to guide you through that is so vital and so key. And hopefully, I really hope, I know I have to let you go because you do have kiddies coming home from school and everything else going on, but I really hope through the group that people will start to realize this, realize the importance. But before I go, we've got about a minute. I just want to give you the last word on anything that you want to add, Deirdre. Anything at all that comes to mind for the viewers listening, who may or may not be a part of the group. And of course, we'll put the group details up there if people would like to request to join your group. Go ahead.
Yeah, just for everybody out there, if anybody's struggling, reach out and get support. Support is what gets us through this, be it a Facebook group or a local support or the ICPO support groups or your own doctor. You know, get help. There is help out there, and all you have to do is ask.
Absolutely wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for creating this absolutely wonderful, tremendous group full of information, and for being one of those people who has aligned with the clinical community and works hand in hand. That co-creation is key to success for so many patients. So thank you, and I wish you the very, very best, Deirdre.
Thanks for having me, Vicky.
Well, what a wonderful interview and conversation with Deirdre, and we are so unbelievably grateful for the work that she and the admin do voluntarily on Facebook to align patients with the correct information, and of course putting the emphasis on the fact that this information is free because it is about your health and it should be out there. Now, I am going to jump over and continue the conversation around bariatric support and online groups with none other than our wonderful team of Susie Burney and Ken Clare. Now, Susie has been the ECPO secretary for a number of years now. She is executive director of ICPO, the Irish Coalition for People Living with Obesity. She is a passionate advocate. She is probably the most attentive person when it comes to looking after her plants in her garden and when it comes to winter. And she is my wing woman in ECPO. And also we have Ken Clare joining us. Now, Ken, of course, has been around. I seen a post lately, Ken, where you said that you were 19 years having launched the first patient advocacy group in the UK, which is a huge congratulations. You are our chairman in ECPO. You are Director of Bariatric Services for Obesity UK. You're an ASO trustee. If I was to list everything about you, I would be here for a long night. However, you're not only an advocate and our friend, but you are my mentor, and I'm glad that you can be here. And I want to open the conversation on the back of what Deirdre said on what Natasja left us with. The importance of having that person, having somebody who you can connect with and relate with. And both Susie and Ken, you guys have ran, particularly in COVID times, quite instrumental and supportive online groups and meetings with people who need weekly support or need an answer to a question and unfortunately may not have that answer in their healthcare service. Now, Susie, I'm going to come to you first, if that's okay, being the lady. And I just want to ask you, what does that look like for the viewers that are here wondering, what's an online support group like? What does that look like, and how does that help people who have had bariatric surgery?
Thanks, Vicky. Well, what Natasja said there about having a buddy, when you're on an online support meeting, you've got loads of buddies. And I suppose that's just a very simple way to put it, because at our meetings, we started our meetings with the help of ECPO when COVID broke. And we went from strength to strength, and we've had 103 meetings so far. We've never missed a week. And I think that's the important thing, is that not missing a single week is that no matter who needs to come online and chat to somebody, it's there. It doesn't matter whether it's Christmas week or Easter week or whatever is going on. There is somebody there. And I think Catherine, one of our members, has said, you're like my family. You're my family away from my family, because in our support groups, people understand there is nobody else who knows that feeling of what it's like to live with excess weight, to have gone through surgery. And when you hear somebody explain their experience, and you've had that experience and you doubted that this was something usual or you're worried about it, it's such a relief. Absolutely such a relief. Yeah. So you don't just have one buddy in a support online meeting, you have loads of buddies. And that's just a very simple way to put it.
Gio, isn't it that you're not alone? And I know that is like such a hashtag that's being used all over the world for mental health, for so much. But you are not alone. But when you're going through a procedure like bariatric surgery, where it is stigmatizing, where people judge you for having that procedure, for going down that road, to, you know, bring your weight down, improve your health and your quality of life. It's quite challenging. And can I ask you, with the online support groups, what are the common themes when it comes to bariatric surgery? You know, what are the challenges perhaps that people are facing that they want to talk about and they need that buddy?
I think one of the challenges ongoing is people around you not understanding. So maybe family, you know, when you go through stalls, or when, you know, you're trying to watch what you're eating when you're out with family, or you're at events. And I think that comes up regularly, is that people don't know how to have that conversation in their families. And quite often they say they don't tell their family, like their wider family. And what should they say? How do they explain they're eating less? Or, you know, so it's that sort of support that they look for. I think quite often in the support groups, people want to be reassured that what they're going through is usual. You know, whether it's, you can have temporary hair loss, which comes back, and it's a relief to know it comes back. It's just one of the many things in a list that can happen after surgery. It's reassurance. It's just reinsurance, I think. Is, you know, it's a challenge. People go through bariatric surgery. They're feeling very vulnerable at a stage for about a few weeks, but being in a support group, they can ask anything. Anything goes in a support group. It's a safe place, it's private, and literally you can talk about anything.
I think, isn't that probably the one thing that resonates? You're like myself. You're the patient who's been through this procedure, and you need that safe space where you know you can ask, and you're not going to be judged. Nobody there is going to glare at you and assume that you've taken the easy road, or they can understand and appreciate that. And creating that safe space has been tremendous for so many people in Ireland. And, you know, a huge congratulations to yourself and your team, your committee, for continuing. 103 meetings is pretty outstanding, considering you only kicked off in COVID times. Now, I want to jump over to Ken. Ken, my dear friend and mentor and colleague for many, many years. Without insinuating that you're any older than perhaps 50, you know, you have been doing this for so many years. And when it comes to bariatric surgery, again, you're a patient. What is, you know, what is the demand? What do people need, do you see in the UK, when it comes to people joining your groups online, or even on Facebook asking the questions in, you know, the Facebook groups? What is the demand? What is the need? What do they need to know?
A lot of what Deirdre said echoed for me, and people are looking for country-specific information. I think there's a lot of Facebook groups out there to choose from, and some of them are moderated and some of them less so. And I think in our group, people like to come along and know that there are people who are watching what's posted, who are looking at the rules. Occasionally sites are used for selling. I think that can be a problem. Also, sometimes I see on other sites people with medical problems who aren't getting the right advice in quite the way they should. And I think that we've got to help people to access that. So in the support groups, I think for me it's about ongoing education, and it's about lifelong education. I think both you and I attended a webinar on Sunday, and I realised that patient education needs to carry on for life.
Yeah.
Not just for the period that you're in the outpatient clinic. And so we're going to do some work about that.
Yeah, we definitely will. And, you know, it was going back to the webinar on Sunday, it was about nutrition after bariatric surgery and the importance of that. And I think probably the most common, if you were to look up the most common word used after bariatric surgery, is either, you know, 2 words, hair loss for ladies, or protein, you know. And I gave up my Sunday afternoon to listen to dietitians and researchers share the latest on what's most important. So I have to say, the fact that people voluntarily give up their time, like yourself, is key to people like myself on the receiving end of surgery, knowing, you know, what to do the next day, what to improve on, everything else. And one thing I actually just want to jump back to, but for both yourself, Ken and Susie, is some of the questions that have come in on Twitter. Now, if you are online, you are following the conversation, We only have 5 minutes left. However, it has been quite interesting. If you put in hashtag ECPO Patient Lounge, you'll find a number of people who have actually commented and talked about the multidisciplinary team and the fact that some countries do not have it instilled within the health services, that you have quite a strong multidisciplinary team and regular follow-up post-surgery. So you might, have an appointment maybe 1 year or 2 years down the line in the HSC or the NHS in the UK, and you don't get much more access. Now, I know from the work that we do in ECPO and looking at the work that is done across Europe and the European Commission, the drive to instill, better services for all people with obesity is there to push that on the member states. But Ken, is this something that you see in the UK, that patients just don't have enough support post-surgery perhaps? And what can we actually do?
Absolutely, Vicky, and it's good in parts. And where it's good, it's very good. So I think it's about making sure that people have got access to psychological support. Mick talked about occupational therapy support, exercise and activity support, and also bariatric physicians. So people who can look after health after. And we're seeing some in the UK, some bariatric GPs. And I think that that's really important as well. I think let's get a good model of care and try and disseminate that across.
Yeah, that leads me beautifully into inviting Susie into this conversation, because we look at Ireland and now we see the words model of care, and we just want to embrace that. Susie, what's your thoughts?
Well, it's fantastic that we have our model of care launched last year, which will hopefully increase the amount of surgeries that will be done. And we know that's important. But just something there that, just reflecting on what Ken said, I think it's with patient education, it's not only hearing the information once. We can hear the information once, but it doesn't mean you'll remember it. And 6 months later, you're in a totally different place post-surgery. And I think it's continued education, like Ken said, because I know I had a very good multidisciplinary team. And yet it was 4 years post-surgery that I actually learned a nutritional information at one of Ken's online meetings about I was taking my calcium wrong. And I never knew. So the information needs to keep being shared. Patients keep needing to be educated. It's not just once. You can have a good multidisciplinary team, and that still isn't enough possibly. So I think, yeah, that's a key point for me.
Yeah, I actually recall the conversation that we had about taking your calcium, not all together in one batch, but later on during the day, spacing it out. And I remember going, wow, how didn't I know this? And I've had a great MDT team as well, but it just goes to show that there is so much information that we need to get out to the patient community, to people who are considering bariatric surgery, people who are post-bariatric surgery. If I'm still learning 16 years after my initial surgery, that just goes to show you, considering our heads are in this.
And I think it's because when you're having appointments with your healthcare team, quite often they don't realize that you're in a heightened state of anxiety at times because of being there just alone. So you're actually only half hearing what's being said. So you need to have it repeated over and over and over again, to remember it, to know it, to understand it. But definitely, I think we all can keep learning.
Yeah, we can. And 1 hour is not enough. Like, I kind of feel like we just hit the tip of the iceberg on this whole conversation, the whole topic. And I'm looking right now at my other screen on Twitter. Rachel is there talking about how lucky they are in the UK to have Ken and the team support them, which is tremendous. We have Alina from France who has joined, and she's delighted to see the empowerment of patients. We've so many of the Irish team. I can see Deirdre and Diane and Bernadette, Maura, Catherine. There's so many out there that are just so excited that we're actually bringing this conversation to the patient community. And I really do hope that people will join us in continuing it, just using hashtag ECPO Patient Lounge, where we can pick it up. And we want to know what you want to know about, what else needs to be divulged or disseminated or communicated even better in these support groups. We literally only have a few seconds left. Ken, can I give you the last word before I say adios?
Thanks, Vicky. I want to say a big shout out to Jimmy and Bev, who run the group every week. And Jimmy's best advice is buy a notebook and take it with you everywhere and write everything down.
Yeah, very true. And a huge thanks to all of the teams who are support and admins and committees who give their time for free for peer-to-peer support. Thank you, Susie, and thank you, Ken. No doubt I will be talking to you probably 8 o'clock tomorrow morning for work. And on that note, we have to say goodbye and a thank you so much for joining us this evening. As I said, continue the conversation on social media because there are people out there that need more information. Of course, you will be able to watch this back. We are recording it. It'll be available in about 1 day or thereabouts on our website. A huge thanks to our partners and sponsors, supporters, Novo Nordisk, IFSO and Medtronic, who without them, we wouldn't be able to bring you our voice, opinions and conversations. Thank you to everybody who's been involved. More so though, Dr. Crotty and Dr. Gerhard Prager, or Professor Gerhard Prager, for giving us their time out of their busy schedules. Huge humongous thank you to our comms team. And on that note, we will see you soon on World OBC Day for our next Patient Lounge. Good night and good evening and God bless.